Welcome to the Awakening Together channel here on YouTube. This is our Awakening Together weekly gathering. Each and every week we have a different minister who speaks. If you'd like to attend our services live, please visit our website awakening-together.org. Click on Online Sanctuary on the main menu. Then, How to Enter the Sanctuary. Our services are held Sundays at 10:15 a.m. Eastern Time. We'd love to see you in the sanctuary.
Everyone, and welcome. I'm so excited to be here for my first service with you guys. So I'm coming to you from a hazy New Jersey today, northern New Jersey, a little bit outside of New York City. And so I'm super grateful. My heart is filled with gratitude this morning to be able to share the message I have to share with you today, to be gathered with so many people across the country, which is unique in Awakening Together. And so before we begin, please greet each other in the chat. I know a few of you have already started to do that. Have fellowship with one another. And I'm going to go ahead and read our statement of purpose. So we are an assembly of equals joined in common purpose, awakening to one true self within an appearance of many faiths, many cultures, many symbols. We seek to discern one truth and to its rest in its embrace. Our core values are as follows. We trust everyone is led by unique inner guidance to one experience called awakening, which is a realization of one true self. We live this value by supporting one another on different paths of awakening. Number two, we realize everyone is equal and no one has been given spiritual intuition that is an authority over the spiritual intuition of others. We live this value by listening to each other, respecting each other, and allowing each other to be where he or she is. Number three, we accept one true self, which is the one presence or being, non-dual, without beginning or end, and absolutely changeless. We live this value by practicing letting go of the belief in the individual self as we are. We affirm one true self as the only truth. And we live this value by embracing what is helpful on the path of awakening without idolizing any spiritual doctrine as truth. And number five, we accept all forms as temporary appearances, permitting through enduring awareness of self. We live this value by honoring all appearances and all experiences while continually reflecting on the changeless truth. We accept one true self, which is one presence or being, non-dual, without beginning or end, and absolutely changeless. We live this value by practicing letting go of the belief in the individual self as we are. Beautiful, thank you. There's nothing like music to just transport us into just beautiful reflection and communion with our source. So let's go there now. So you can close your eyes or just gaze at the floor in reflection. All of us are gathered here today because we desire truth above all else. We know enlightenment is a journey of the mind from a focus on the body to a focus on spirit, from a limited sense of self to an unlimited sense of self, from a sense of separateness to a sense of unity with all things. From blame to blessing, from fear to love. We know the journey from our mind to our heart is not always easy, but I promise it is always miraculous. It changes every aspect of our lives. It transforms our nervous system, our energy, and our internal state of being. And it leads to changes in our behavior, and it shifts us from how we respond to others. As enlightenment becomes our goal, our life is free to transform. We release our attachment to lower things, allowing our mind to be guided to higher realms. Let fear dissolve in all of us today. Let our love flow forth. And as we prepare to receive this word and message, let our hearts be opened. Let us be redeemed. And let us be changed by them. So now I'd like to introduce Reverend Tawonda Chase to do our readings for today. The Sufi Book of Life, 99 Pathways of the Heart, Modern Dervish, chapter 61, pages 66 to 67, and also in NTI, Matthew chapter 12, verses 30 to 32. Thanks, Tawonda.
Thank you, Erica. Good morning, everyone. We'll start with transition, the Sufi Book of Life. It's titled Al-Munet. When you are guided to this pathway, take the opportunity to remember that all formed, embodied existence, thoughts, feelings, identities, and bodies come to an end and opens a door to another world. Like the old Hebrew word usually translated death, mawet, the Arabic maut, from which the pathway comes, shows not an end, but a transition from one state to another, and one that returns a being to the universal self. We may experience such transitions in small ways many times throughout our lives, but we often fail to go through them consciously. They can happen at a time of crisis for us, the death of a loved one, the breakup of a relationship, or the loss of work. In Sufi terms, the experiences we have of dying within everyday life are called fana, passing away from one image, concept, or configuration of ourself to another. When we go through these transitions consciously, the self that resurrects itself reflects more of the whole, more of its purpose in life, and more of the beloved than the one that passed away. Hence the Sufi adage, often attributed to Imam Ali, die before you die. The Sufis tell many stories about this experience, but none more famous or poignant than the following, as retold by Attar. Once a group of moths fell in love with a flame. They consulted together and decided to send someone to investigate their beloved more closely, because from their vantage, they could see only a blinding light. One moth went out and returned, then gave a fuller description. 3 parts to the flame, the dark underneath, the light in the middle, and an aura around it. The wise moth that chaired the meeting decided this wasn't good enough, so another volunteered to go. This one singed its wings on the flame and returned, describing the burning sensation, the pain, and the heat. This report was still deemed unsatisfying to the rest. Finally, a 3rd moth flew into the flame, embraced, and made love to it. Flame and moth were now one. This one knows and understands, said the wise moth, but it cannot say anything. Next reading is Matthew chapter 12 from NTI, verse 30 to 32. It is not bodies that are one. Do not let thoughts of confusion confuse you. Bodies are temporal and will not last. Yet you are eternal, so you must be one. It is a spirit that tells us who we are. It is a spirit that knows our truth. Let go of what your eyes tell you, for surely your eyes will not last forever. What do they know of eternity? Listen to spirit, for the eternal knows what eternity is. Thank you.
Thank you, Tawonda.
Welcome.
Okay. So the message I wanted to share with you today, and let me put my timer on because I'm a talker, so I'll just keep going. So the message I wanted to share with you today is very fresh and relevant for me. I've experienced 2 significant losses in the span of a year. And those losses have led me to reflect more deeply on the process of grief. And that's what I wanted to talk to you about today. This intersection of grief, purpose, and transformation. So just to rewind, several years ago, I was packing up my apartment. I was leaving yet another failed relationship. It was probably just under $30,000 in debt. And I was at the height of a 16-year struggle with food addiction. I was lost, to say the least. And at the time, I was making plans to relocate, and I had gotten a phone call that would change my life. My grandparents, who were parents to me, they weren't doing well. My mom gave me a phone call, and she said, look, can you help? Can you help take care of them? And without question, I elected to move in and support their care, their day-to-day care. My grandmother had Alzheimer's disease, and my grandfather eventually kidney failure. So if you know anyone, if you've ever been a caretaker, if you know anyone with Alzheimer's, you know what a cruel disease that it is. It's more than memory loss. It's delusions, it's mood swings, it's hallucinations, it's cognitive decline. And as she advanced, she lost the ability to dress herself, her hygiene, overall her ability to communicate. And there were so many aspects of that journey with her that I grieved my relationship at each stage of her decline. Because it was no longer her granddaughter, just her granddaughter, right? I had switched that role from child to adult with her. Those roles were reversed. And shortly after, my grandfather started to decline from years of diabetes, his kidneys started to fail. So if you've been a caretaker, it's physically and emotionally demanding. Here's the thing about that. Things that are physically and emotionally demanding can also call us to a higher version of ourselves. Something magical happens when you have clear, singular purpose. There's a calling from inner wisdom. So what others would describe as hard often just kind of comes without much effort. And because of that purpose, other areas of my life started to mature. And during that 4 to 5 year span of caring for them, I did pay off all my debt. I got stronger in the gym and had a healthier lifestyle. I managed a pandemic with 2 elderly people, which in itself is its whole thing. I started my own business. I became a minister, so I could share with you today. And I have a healthy, enlightened relationship with myself and a partner. Chapter 38 of the Tao Te Ching says the ordinary person who uses force will find that they accomplish nothing. That the kind person that acts from the heart and accomplishes a multitude of things. The highest good is not just to seek good, but to allow yourself to become it. So without purpose, we force many paths in our lives that seem to be going nowhere. But a path that is paved with purpose, that follows their heart and is led with the Tao, well, that feels natural. I knew my way without knowing my way. After about 10 months of decline, my grandfather passed last year in April. So April 21st. My grandmother is now in an elder care facility. His death really seemed to mark an end, not just of his life, but of a season of so many things that had been happening in my life. And then we had sold our childhood home. And I would be moving on to this next phase. And at the time I grieved, yet I kind of felt accomplished carrying out his end of life plan. So he died at home, surrounded by family, right into the end. And so I was like, good, we did what we came out to do. And so, yes, there's sadness, but, things ultimately went to plan. And my grandfather's pride and joy. The man is dying, and he's like, what's going to happen to the dogs? Not his children, not his grandchildren, the dogs, okay? No surprise. And the man used to militantly walk them every day up until he couldn't, and then I took on that tradition. But he loved those dogs. So after his death, and he knew that I took in his 7 pound, which I'm sorry, it wasn't 7 pounds because he used to feed him from the table. I got her down to 7 pounds after, she wasn't being fed like that. Maltese. Her name was Carrie. She was a little weirdo, but she made us laugh, always running in the grass and just running in circles. And she had anxiety. She always wanted to be near you. And she didn't leave his side right up until the hour of his passing. She was just as important to me as she was to him. She always knew what we needed. That's what animals do. They know what we need. She provided a comfort. She was a friend. She was there during all the challenging moments of that caretaking process. And afterwards, she provided some consistency for me in so much uncertainty as I was leaving this sort of caretaker position that I had been in for many years. So last Friday, I picked up Carrie's ashes. A week to the day, 1 year anniversary of his passing, Carrie passed too. Yet her death seemed to hit me much harder than my grandfather's. I had handed her a doggy treat and she choked, and I couldn't get it out. Guilt, regret, shock. This was not the plan. For 2 long minutes, I watched her fight for life. The trauma surrounding the accident, her untimely death, it just jolted me. This was not part of the plan. I think I read somewhere that, Mike Tyson said that everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. This was my punch in the face. It didn't occur to me until Carrie died that I was not just grieving her, but I had been in a season of grieving over the past year. I thought I had packed up my feelings all nice and tight in a little bow and sent it off with the house and with my grandfather's ashes. And I would put my head down as focusing on my new business and my new relationship and all things. But truthfully, the past year felt a little lost. It was hard to motivate and sad often. It was unclear fully of my direction. And I had been grieving not just the loss of them, but the loss of what I perceived to be the most meaningful, important event in my life, which was being a caretaker. There has been no accomplishment more important than what I did with them. And thinking about your own grief is like a weight. It's like a weight that sits on us, keeps you from moving, makes you sleep when you know you have things to do. It drains your motivation from all things that used to come easy. It can make us moody, emotional, makes us question our direction, makes things so unclear. It can withdraw us from others, maybe into work or food or alcohol, just isolation. Of all the experiences that we can have in life, grief is universal. I mean, there'll be some people that will never be a millionaire, probably will never be a millionaire, might never have children, we might never climb Mount Kilimanjaro. But grief is something that we all experience. What is your grief story? When was the last time you experienced grief? Because we often associate grief with like death of the body. The physical body breaks down, so it's gone. I thought, that was true of my grandfather. I thought I had packaged that. But grief isn't linear. It wears a lot of masks. It looks different for everyone. During the pandemic, a lot of people grieved their lives that they had before COVID happened, grieved the loss of a job, Some people are grieving losses of relationships. Maybe it was a dream. And my buddy Cornell, he was supposed to be a professional basketball player until an injury of the knee was career ending. His dream seemed at a loss. There are some people who are mourning the lives that they thought their children would have, as my friend's son struggles with addiction. What is your grief story? Webster defines grief as this deep emotional distress and suffering as a response to loss. I feel like that definition isn't quite complete because it doesn't touch on all the complexities and emotions that come with grief, like guilt and sorrow and anger and confusion and pain. As truth seekers, we take a deeper look at grief. And when we do, we see it's the ego's way of resisting change. This is the way the world was, and it isn't anymore. Or it's certainly not how I thought it should be. There's so much in life that seems uncertain. But when we have put our trust and faith in impermanence, then we experience suffering. And in NTI, do not let thoughts of confusion confuse you. Bodies are temporal, and they will not last, yet you are eternal. My purpose and my worth was tied to the act of caretaking. So when it was gone, so went my purpose and my worth too. Don't put your faith in form. It is the spirit that tells us who we are. It is the spirit that knows our truth. Let go of what your eyes tell you. For sure, your eyes will not last forever. I have to let go of the thoughts, the ideas, the concepts I have about myself to release grief. I have to release the judgment on myself. I have to release the form of what this process should look like, this grieving process should look like. I have to release the form of what life should look like. I have to release the form of my grandfather or Carrie as they were. What do they know of eternity? Why am I looking to the ego mind? It is the spirit that is eternal. The witnesser, the Tao that moves through us, the intuition, the Holy Spirit. Listen to the spirit, for the eternal know what eternity is. I love that. The eternal know what eternity is. So what do we know about impermanence? Impermanence is change. So oftentimes when things feel hazy about a concept, I always turn to nature, right? The Tao tells us to turn to nature. What is the nature of things? So I did that in here as well, and I'd like to share with you this part. And I think it's fully relevant here to think about the metamorphosis of a butterfly. Right now, this is an old cliche, but bear with me here. So in understanding and releasing the concept of death as this finite end and more of a transition of form, because everyone knows that caterpillars weave themselves into a little cocoon and they come out beautiful butterflies. Everybody pays attention to the beautiful butterfly on the other end. And maybe they pay attention to the caterpillar, but what happens in between? This is where it gets interesting. Okay. So inside the cocoon of a caterpillar, as it's transforming into this new creature, the old caterpillar body has to be broken down in order to be turned into something new. So a caterpillar's body actually, this is gross, it digests itself from the inside out. It takes the same juices that it would use as a larvae that would digest food, and it uses that same juice to break down its own body. So I know this is horrifying, and yet, bear with me. So the old caterpillar body breaks down into cells called imaginal cells. I'm not making this up, I swear to God. Imaginal cells are undifferentiated cells, which can literally become any kind of cell it wants to. And they're used to form the new body, right? So a cell that can literally be any type of cell, it can imagine itself into what it wants into this butterfly, into what it wants to create. And in order for imaginal cells to even kick in, the caterpillar has to let go of the attachment to the idea that it's a caterpillar, so it can be free to become a butterfly. So when I think back on my life, this certainly isn't the first time I've been in a cocoon. We're constantly breaking down and transforming into the next version of ourselves. And where does that come? That comes from our own concepts and suffering, right? That's that digestive larvae, right? That's breaking down, right? But each time we break down and transform, we become more whole and more complete. Sort of the paradox, right? So according to Sufism life, right? Life is not a finite entity. There's no end at death. It has many levels and transitions. And so I love that translation of the old Hebrew word, right? Of death, mot, right? This pathway comes. It's so beautiful. From this pathway of debt and heartbreak, where I'm standing on a doorway, not knowing where to go, was invited to this next chapter to be with my grandparents and nurture and have purpose and come into this best version of myself, to then go back into loss and grief again. And in Sufi terms, this experience of dying happens, right? It happens in that sort of sense of like how we look at these stages of our lives. And then it happens within certain moments and concepts that we let die within our mind. There's just this recycling, a transition from one to the other. But what happens if you get stuck in a transition like grief? What if the caterpillar gets stuck in the cocoon? Well, guess what? We come to a crossroads. We could try to restore the old life and old self and hang on. Or we can accept and understand the nature of things, the nature and transition of form, and turn our faith away from impermanent and back to the eternal, right? Because what's constant? The constant is the witnesser. Even when we're stuck, there is a promise though, right? So even in a state of being stuck in this in-between transition, there's a promise of transcendence and resurrection, because that is the nature of things. We understand the nature of things. We find acceptance and transcend our own suffering. We transcend grief. And as the self resurrected, we emerge more whole, more ourselves each time. So my grandfather and Carrie have passed form. I hold the promise of transcendence in my heart. I trust in the nature of things, in the transition of form, in the eternity of souls. Where are you in your next transformation? Where are you weaving your cocoon or breaking down your old self or breaking out of your cocoon and ready to reveal your wings? As spring approaches, I know that when I see a butterfly, I'm going to be reminded that my own wings are forming. My own next phase is coming. And it is coming for all of us. Thank you for hearing this message. And I'd like you to hear now a song I cry every time I hear it, for contemplation and meditation. Thank you. I love that song. I think I get emotional about it because it makes me, it's almost like me versus my ego all the time. And it was me who was always so hardest on myself. So when I hear that, I know it's probably written for some guy or something, but I hear me versus my ego, and it just has a whole new meaning for me. And so I hope that in your own reflection, you were able to relate to it in your own way. So I'd love to open it up to sharing for all in what you heard in this message and what you'd like to share. Yes, Shauna, thank you.
Hi, Erica. Thank you so much. What a wonderful first homily. You're a natural. I mean, I just feel your enthusiasm, your love, clarity. It was just beautiful, went straight to my heart. And I love that you said there's this clear, singular purpose, what I heard anyway, a clear, singular purpose allowed a maturity in your life. And I just love that because all the masters talk about having a clear, singular purpose for our spiritual growth. And that really speaks to me. What am I excluding out of this singular purpose? What exceptions am I making? What am I holding on to? Those are all really good self-inquiry questions for me. And the death of your pet, oh, that just struck my heart. And you asked the question, though, about grief. When was the last time I experienced grief? And I love that you pointed out it wears many masks, because it does. Because there's a level where I feel grief every day. When I see something, a preference, a belief, a concept that I need to let go of, I feel grief around that. And form-wise, I grieve about having lost my mother a long time ago. We were best friends. Every time I think of her, I grieve because I came from California and I love Northern California and have tons of friends there. I grieve when I see a little dead critter. So grief does wear many masks. And it's so important for me to look at that. And I love that you pointed out that it's ego's resistance to change. That can be a big part of grief for me, especially seeing a preference or something that I need to let go of. And that grief is, no, I don't want it to change. I'm not going to let that go. And then the butterfly and caterpillar was really interesting because of the transformation when it's in the cocoon. The juices are eating itself. And that's so true. If the awareness of my awareness is consistent enough, that's what it does to the ego, those preferences, those concepts, those beliefs. I love that. And then you asked us, where am I in the transition? So I'm deeply in purification. So this is back and forth between seeing. I have to see what is here to be let go, to let go of it. And the preferences and the defending those preferences and to speak when from ego instead of being in presence. Those are the things I'm really looking at right now, that self-will and how it drives the actions and thoughts that I do not want to enliven and that I do not want to give life to. And then just to question everything. For me, it's questioning everything. That's a big transition from believing everything to questioning everything. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for those beautiful reflections on everything that you pointed out and how they resonated with you. I'm really grateful for that share. Reverend Gloria.
Hello, beloveds. I just wanted to come on and say, first of all, thank you to Reverend Erica, as well as the reader today for today's reading and today's message. I'm just struck with a sense of awe, a sense of connectedness. I'm scheduled to speak next week. My teaching has already come forward. I know for sure what I'll be talking about, and it is in relation to grief. So I'm beside myself with, because I feel a very strong sense of connection. I feel very strongly that there is, in fact, one being, one presence speaking to and through each of us, showing up as each of us. And we are all being elevated and learning together on this amazing journey. So, join me next week for Ice Cream for Breakfast. That is the title of my homily, and I look forward to tying into what Reverend Erica has shared today and bringing forth another level of this teaching. Thank you so much. Great love.
Thank you, Reverend Gloria. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited for your talk. I'm so glad that this was inspired. Like, there's no accidents, you know, like all of this is so divine. The divine thread is real. And ice cream for breakfast, geez, my brothers would really love that. So I'm interested, I'm intrigued. Any other shares? I'm reading all these amazing comments in the chat. I am super grateful on how this message has resonated with you, and I have taken in all these comments. I just want to thank Tawonda personally for being my reader today. Reverend Tawonda is wonderful, and anyone else that wants to share before we move on? Okay, so I would just like at this time then just to express my gratitude and love for all of you, for being here, for sharing with this message today. And those of you who end up watching this recording after, you know, you're as much a part of my journey as I am a part of yours. And we're all teachers and servants of one another. So I am grateful to all of you, and to have this opportunity to be able to share my message and to be a minister in spiritual guidance with all of you. So thank you. Thank you. And so before we close today, I just want to remind everyone that as a church, Awakening Together's primary form of income is donations. So if you benefit from Awakening Together, and our services that we provide, you know, please make a donation. Sina has put the link in the chat, so you can go to that link and make a donation. Thank you all again for being a part of my first service. It has been a joy and a privilege, and I look forward to doing this again in future services. Have a blessed day.
You've been watching our online gathering. It happens weekly on Sundays at 10:15 a.m. Eastern Time. To join us live in the sanctuary, visit our website, awakening-together.org. You'll want to click on Online Sanctuary in the main menu, and then in the drop-down menu, look for How to Enter the Sanctuary. Right there at the top of the page is a clickable link. We'd love to see you in the sanctuary and join with you in fellowship. Thank you again for watching. Also, please know that if you'd like to stay connected via the Awakening Together channel here on YouTube, you can subscribe and hit the bell for more notifications. We hope to see you in the sanctuary.